Tomorrow night, we'll hear a speech from the President of the United States about an issue that affects every single one of us in America. It affects millions in a personal way and all of us indirectly. It's the state of our economy. It's an economy that has been racked by a recession which has gone on way too long. Even the President concedes that we had hoped that we would have emerged at this point, but we still have not. I think it is important for us to focus on the reality of life, even for working families in America. Too many working families today are struggling to survive paycheck to paycheck. Over the last 10 or 20 years, we have seen a decline in the rate of growth in real wages, which means that families, even working families, aren't earning enough to keep up with the cost of living. They're falling a little bit behind each year. They recently surveyed working families across America and asked them a basic question. They said, if you had an emergency in your family and needed to come up with $2,000 in the next 30 days, could you find that $2,000 either in your savings or borrow it? 47% of working families said they could not come up with $2,000 in 30 days. $2,000 is the cost of an uneventful trip to an emergency room. It's an indication of the vulnerability of families all across America. I'm also concerned about the fact that as you speak about the economy, we know that many families are doing the right thing, trying to shed debt. We see the credit card debt in America declining as fewer and fewer people borrow against their credit cards, understanding the interest rates they're going to pay are way too high, and it's impossible to keep up with your debt if you pile it all on credit cards. People are reluctant to purchase because they're afraid of debt and vulnerable with the thought of losing their jobs or perhaps seeing a decline in their wages. That's the reality of life for working families across America. It's a reality that I've seen in Illinois and a reality that really affects us nationwide. The President will address that tomorrow night, as he should. I think there are ways to deal with it, but here is the caution I would like to add. We are fixed on the theme of our nation's deficit and debt, and we should be, because as we borrow 40 cents for every dollar we spend, we create an unsustainable situation for future generations. That's a fact. I've been party to the Bowles-Simpson Commission, where I voted for their report. I worked with the Gang of Six, some bipartisan effort in the Senate, which has more than 30 senators showing an interest in this approach. So I really seriously believe that this deficit and debt are a problem for us in the long term. But I might remind my colleagues on both sides of the aisle that Bowles-Simpson, this bipartisan presidential commission, concluded that we should not hit the brakes on spending, should not hit the brakes on government activity too soon because of the recession. In fact, they recommended that we wait another year with a serious effort to reduce the deficit coming after the recession. The logic behind it is obvious. It is virtually impossible to balance the budget of the United States with 14 million people out of work. You need to put Americans back to work, earning a good paycheck, paying their taxes, and then you can start building this economy and building toward a balanced budget. I hope that we keep that in mind as we talk about what we're facing, as we try to create a climate to create more jobs in America. It is interesting to me, the President will propose to extend the payroll tax cut for working families across America. It accounts for 2% of income. That, to me, is sensible. Put spending power in the hands of working families, lower and middle-income families. These are the people who are struggling paycheck to paycheck. We've done that. We should continue to do that. The criticism from the Republican side of the aisle is, no, you shouldn't allow a tax cut for middle-income families and those in lower-income categories unless you pay for it. Interesting enough, that's exactly the opposite position from what they took when they were talking about tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans. When the Republicans wanted to see tax cuts for those making over $250,000 a year, they say, we don't have to pay for them. But when we talk about tax cuts for working families, middle-income families, all of a sudden they become deficit hawks and say you have to pay for those tax cuts. I think that we should continue the 2% payroll tax cut to help working families. I think that's good. I also think we ought to extend unemployment benefits. I spent my time in August in Illinois visiting unemployment offices where I met a lot of people who are struggling every single day to apply for jobs, sometimes 4 and 5 applications a day, and many times without success. They are doing their best to pick up new skills at community colleges and training courses. They're trying to make their resumes look a little more attractive, working to do so, and they're running into a brick wall time after time. Some are in extremely desperate circumstances. Extending unemployment compensation at this moment in our economy is absolutely essential. It is the right and caring and humane thing to do, and it also injects money into the economy. The president will call for this, and I think he's right. The Republicans have said we have to pay for that unemployment compensation. Again, it is hard to follow their logic as they offer millions of dollars of tax relief for the wealthiest people, refuse to end the tax cuts and benefits for the most profitable oil companies in America, and when it comes to helping the unemployed and middle income, then they become deficit hawks. They also talk about the corporate income tax. The corporate income tax rate in America is 35%, and they say it's one of the highest in the world. That's true, but it's an effective rate versus the nominal rate. The nominal rate's 35%, the effective rate is much lower. Take, for example, the report that just came out that puts this in perspective. It was a report that compared the salaries for the CEOs, the chief executive officers of major American corporations. 25 of the 100 highest paid corporate executives in the United States earned more in pay than their company paid in taxes in the year 2010. That's right, our tax code is so easy on massive multinational corporations, they pay their top executives more than they pay in federal taxes each year. It's a startling fact. It's a report released by the Institute for Policy Studies. If you look through the report, you'll see some of the biggest names in corporate America. Look at General Electric. They made waves when it was reported that it paid zero, absolutely nothing in federal taxes last year. In fact, GE got a refund from the government of over $3 billion. The top executive at General Electric was compensated to the tune of $15.2 million. Consider that for a moment when we talk about the unfairness of corporate taxes. The biggest multinational corporations in America are escaping the 35% rate. Some are actually getting money back, and they're paying their executives money in reward for coming up with these tax strategies under our current tax code. You want to clean up the tax code? Stop imposing the highest corporate tax rate on middle and small businesses and impose it on the large corporations, the most profitable corporations in America. The other idea is this repatriation tax holiday. We should take care here. Before we allow major corporations to bring their profits back into the United States tax-free or at lower tax rates, which is what they're asking for, look at what happened when we tried that under the Bush administration. $362 billion in earnings repatriated under the holiday, $312 billion qualified for the tax break, but we didn't see a corresponding increase in employment of those corporations. They brought back the money they earned in profits overseas and declared it as dividends and profits and gave it in compensation and bonus to their executives. They did not create jobs. Now the Republicans are pushing for that same strategy. They want to give this tax holiday to these major corporations with no strings attached. I think we've learned our lesson under the Bush administration. If that money's coming back to America, it should be dedicated to growing the corporations in America and growing good-paying jobs right here at home. And it shouldn't go out the door in executive compensation, dividends, and profits. The tax code is unfair, but it's primarily unfair to working families. We've got to do everything we can to make it fair for them. And secondly, we've got to make sure that we eliminate some of the loopholes that are stacked in the tax code today. I've been in favor of tax reform and think it's an essential part of fairness in America, getting the economy moving forward and dealing responsibly with our deficit.